Amen. We give a lot of our children's ministry team is right here on the front row. Uh, that took pies in the face. So the idea was, if you bring 50 boxes of cereal, this person gets pied. If you bring 100, this person, so on and so forth, all the way up to 400 to get Miss Christie. And we ended up with 441. So those guys are all tremendous sports. Many of them were in concussion protocol after getting hit in the face so just deeply grateful for all that. Kingdom Quest, it was a fun theme because there were lots of different things. We had a space theme, or kind of a Star Wars theme one night. Then we had a medieval theme, and then we had a jungle theme. I told Rock I cannot let him get away with this without saying it up here. So Rock, who's so game to be and dress up at all these things every different night, for the jungle theme, he dressed up as Indiana Jones. And he asked the kids, how many of you have seen Indiana Jones? And some of them did. And Rock, who's like 8 years old himself, 22, right? Rock was like, I haven't seen Indiana Jones. I'm told he dresses like this. And I was like, oh, like I made that sound that some of you made. And I told him in the hallway, I was like, man, when you said that, like a little part of me died. And without hesitation, he said, I knew some of the old people were going to be upset about that. I was like, my God, like, what in the world? So he got literally bloodied at the end of the week by getting hit in the face with pie. So incredible, selfless spirit with our whole children's ministry team. Every kid who walks in this place, whether they come to church here or not, or will ever come to church here, can know that there is joy and know that they are loved. One of the stories this week is the story of Jesus and Peter walking on the water. And I want to show you what happens in that story right afterward. So this is in Matthew 14. Jesus has walked on water. He invites Peter to come out and walk with him. This is this high point in Jesus' ministry. And it's about halfway through the Gospel of Matthew. So it's not the first thing he does. It's not the last thing he does. He's built this following, this energy, all of these things. And so you can tell that after that story happens, Jesus and his disciples then cross the lake, and they come to shore near the town of Gennesaret, or there's like 8 different ways to pronounce that. It continues in verse 35. The people found out Jesus was there, and they sent word to everyone who lived in this part of the country. So they brought all the sick people to Jesus, and they begged Jesus just to let them touch his clothes. And everyone who did was healed. So if we put ourselves there, this guy already had a following, all these things. And to be honest, I don't even know if any of them know, hey, he just walked on water last night, and one of his followers did too. But by the time they get to the other side, the word has spread to the extent that they show up, and the word is out that he's there, and everybody is bringing everybody just to touch him. And that when they do, they are healed. You can imagine, maybe I can imagine, and some of you can too, there would be some initial skepticism about this, maybe more so today in our generation than 2,000 years ago, of like, is he really healing people? Is this really what's taking place? But however long it took, once you really believed it, once you really believed that, listen, like if you just touch his clothes, once you really believed it, think about who you would bring. Think about who you wouldn't bring, right? Like who wouldn't you bring? Everybody comes and gathers in this place. They're being healed. These incredible things are happening. So at this point, again, kind of halfway through the Jesus life and ministry, the Pharisees, the teachers of the law, kind of the experts, they've heard enough about him at this point now to where they want to come see what's happening too. And you think about it, he's walked on water. He helped a human being walk on water. When people just touch his clothes, they are healed. He's gathered all these crowds. So if you're the Pharisees, if you're the experts, think about what kind of questions you would have about something that surely seems like it must be from God. But instead, you know what question the Pharisees lead with? This is Matthew 15. About this time, some Pharisees and teachers of the law of Moses came from Jerusalem. They could ask him anything, right? What do they ask him? Why don't your disciples obey what our ancestors taught us to do? They don't wash their hands before they eat. They could ask him anything. And yet from word one, it seems like their desire, their motive is to try and figure out a way how this is not true. How can we discredit Jesus? How can we bring him down? And never mind, this kind of healing that he's doing is not quiet or subversive. It's the whole town brings their people, and all you got to do is touch his clothes. This isn't a hidden thing or a magic trick. All of these people, all this community would have been coming brought in an unavoidable way of drawing attention. All of these different kinds of ways that even if you were unsure, wouldn't you have so many questions? How are you doing this healing? We heard you walked on water. Did you really? Tell us about this, all this other stuff. But nope, their first question is, hey, we heard your disciples don't wash their hands before they eat. What possible ways could we find to prove that this isn't the case? These Pharisees, these religious leaders are very focused on Old Testament law, and a big portion of Old Testament law is the conversation about what is clean and what is unclean. In the old system, the way, in part, that you stayed in connection with God, the way you followed God, your religion was in large part about doing things that kept you clean and staying away from things that kept you unclean. Staying away from certain kinds of food, staying away from certain kinds of activities, staying away from certain kinds of animals, certain kinds of people, certain kinds of behaviors, all of those kinds of things. There was so much emphasis placed on this idea of being clean or unclean. In Leviticus, which is the Old Testament book of the law, the word unclean shows up 76 times just between Leviticus 11 and Leviticus 15 alone. So there are all these proclamations about saying, if you do this, you'll be unclean. If you do this, you'll be unclean. If you do this, you'll be unclean. But what's really interesting about what they've asked Jesus here is, ironically, not washing your hands before you eat isn't on the list. Nowhere in Leviticus does it say, if you don't wash your hands before you eat, you will be unclean, even though for the parents in the room, that's technically correct, right? It's a great idea, but it's not Old Testament law. It's something that the religious leaders over the years added on, along with many other things. Because if you can count on human beings to do anything, if there are this many rules, we're going to find a way to make it this many. Over time, to add this exception and this exception and this exception and this exception. And so by the time we get to Jesus' day, centuries and centuries after these laws were officially given, there's the Old Testament law, but there's also the tradition and the prophets and all these other things that have been added on top of it. So what they're coming at Jesus with isn't even a chapter and verse out of Leviticus. It's their own tradition. Hey, we heard your guys don't wash their hands before they eat. And I know, especially for parents, because I am one, I know this kind of reflex. Like, it's easy to just make the Pharisees the two-dimensional bad guys. I get it. Sometimes I just want my kids to wash their hands. And what I want to stay away from is the kind of mentality, I don't want my kids to run in off the street and be like, Dad, right before dinner, to run in and be like, Dad, we just slayed a dragon. And I was like, whoa, 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 wash your hands, right? I don't want to do that. But it's easy sometimes. Again, maybe this is just me, but it's easy sometimes the more stressed we are, the more our minds are somewhere else on other things. It's easy to just get focused on, okay, did you do the things I asked you to do? Yes or no? And never mind all this other stuff. Did you wash your hands before you eat? Are we clean or are we unclean? It's not that washing your hands before you eat is a bad idea. It's a good idea. But it's not one of the laws And it also becomes kind of all the Pharisees can see. They're so focused on this that they can't see any of the other incredible things that Jesus is doing. Which is why, ironically, Jesus is going to follow up by saying, stay away from those Pharisees. They're like blind people leading other blind people, and all of them will fall into a ditch. There's one thing, if you're a blind person, it's one thing to lead in a kind of way to say, hey, I have no idea where I'm going. Maybe if I stand on the edge of the steps like this can really illustrate this point, right? I have no idea where I'm going. I need your help. Maybe you can help me figure it out. It's one thing to kind of own that sort of story and say, hey, we're figuring this out together. But the most dangerous thing is a blind person who thinks they can see really well and then invites others to come and follow in that same way, when the reality for the Pharisees is that they're so focused in tight on what they can prove, they're so focused in tight on the letter of the thing, they can't even see the larger thing that Jesus is doing behind them. Sometimes we can stare so hard at whether or not the hands are clean, we're blind to the bigger things God is doing. So Peter is going to ask a question about this. This is verse 15. Peter replied to Jesus, Jesus, what did you mean when you talked about the things that make people unclean? And Jesus, which has to be a common feeling for Jesus, don't any of you know by now what I'm talking about? Jesus says, don't you know that the food you put into your mouth goes into your stomach and then comes out of your body? Fun fact on Family Sunday, the New Testament was originally written in Greek, and in Greek it says, don't you know that the food you put in your mouth goes into your stomach and then goes into the toilet? Which is, thank you, children. That's good. That's what we're here for. My kids, that's what my kids are here for this morning. When the question is what makes you unclean, Jesus says, look, what you eat goes in your mouth, in your stomach, then it leaves your body. But the words that come out of your mouth, the words that come out of your mouth come from your heart. And that's what makes you unfit to worship God. Because out of your heart comes evil thoughts and murder and unfaithfulness in marriage and vulgar deeds and stealing and telling lies and insulting others. These are what make you unclean. Eating without washing your hands will not make you unfit to worship God. So I think there's kind of the adult version of what we want to hear this morning, but also the childlike version of what we want to hear. Sometimes the adult in me needs to hear, eating without washing your hands will not make you unfit to worship God. I don't want to miss the bigger things that are happening in life because I'm so focused on, whoa, did you wash your hands? Whoa. That's not what makes us unclean. And Jesus has come so that all foods, all animals, all kinds of things like that, those are not the things that defile. All foods are made clean. In Jesus, it's not about follow these rules and do this and all that'll make you clean. What makes us clean is Jesus. That's what makes us clean. And we don't have to live in a certain kind of way to always be worried about or consumed with, am I clean enough? It's clean and unclean, and his sacrifice takes care of all of that for us. But he also speaks this greater truth of, it's not the washing of your hands that makes you unclean or unfit. It's what comes out of us. It's not what goes in. It's what comes out. And all those things, eating without washing your hands, no, but telling lies, stealing, insulting others. The question is not, how are your hands? The question is, how's your heart? What comes out of our hearts that needs forgiveness? Dishonesty, insults, these are the places we want to be aware of and seek forgiveness for. The truth is, our hearts will never be perfect. We are always going to be in need of grace. And that's the good news, as we often say, is that grace is right here. And grace doesn't just forgive us for the things that come out of our mouths that we want back. Or the words we say where as soon as it escapes our lips, we're like, I wish I could grab that and just push it back in, and now I can't. Now we got to deal with that and all that stuff. There's forgiveness for all of that. But the good news about grace is it doesn't just forgive us. It's going to be at work in our hearts. It's going to invite us to become more and more and more like him, so that our hearts, over the course of our lives in following Jesus, are more and more being transformed to look more and more like his. I don't want to be so focused in on one thing that I miss the incredible things that Jesus is doing all around me. As he says, look, it's not what goes in that makes you unclean, it's what comes out. And whatever has come out of your mouth recently that you'd like to have back, there's forgiveness for every syllable of it in the cross. It's not a matter of clean and unclean for us anymore. In Jesus, we are all white as snow. But more than just seeking forgiveness for the words that come out of our mouth, can we bring our hearts before him in such a way that we might be invited to grow more and more into his heart, which over time might even grow more and more into his words, something that sounds a little more like him coming out of our mouths and a little less like me. This is the good news, that we don't have to be so focused on one thing that we miss everything, but what comes out of our hearts matters. And that is exactly what Jesus has come to make a difference in us.